Welcome to my YouTube channel, Explore the Exceptional with Dr. Gross. I'm Dr. Bob Wenzel Gross. This video is from my Analyzing Anomalies series. It's episode 3 and it's titled An Anomalist Investigates an Alleged UFO Incident. By the end of this chapter, or actually by the end of this YouTube video, you will understand that although anomalistics is not itself a science, it can aid science by calling attention to new anomalies that might help renovate the scientific theory. In short, where there is no evidence, there is no science. An anomalist is a scientist who has a special interest in investigating all layers of reality, with a particular love for those subjects situated on the fringe of the scientific world. Science is a body of knowledge acquired through curiosity by using a structured approach. More importantly, science is a process of becoming less wrong over time. The term anomalistics refers to a field of interdisciplinary study that deals with rare and unusual objects and occurrences that have perceptual qualities. As an anomalist, I employ anomalistics to analyze the UFO phenomenon. Analyzing is a higher order thinking skill. Let me give you an example of what I have found after studying UFOs, or at least the UFO phenomenon, for at least 35 years. Following is one of those examples. In 1959, a multitude of East Coast eyewitnesses observed a spectacular anomalous phenomenon in the sky. On or about October 28, 1959, people along the East Coast witnessed a brilliant show of anomalous, minute, little flashing lights in the sky. The remarkable display lasted for about 10 minutes. From New England to South Carolina, reports of unanticipated, extraordinary sightings of unique, unexplained airborne objects came pouring in to the police stations and the fire departments. Also, the newspapers and the television stations and the radio stations got phone calls about the event. What were those mysterious specks of flashing light overhead? A meteor shower? Sputnik stuff? Something NASA launched? Or UFOs? The light show was caused by an initial test of a NASA 110-foot diameter inflatable metallized sphere for the Echo 1 passive communications satellite project. The test surprisingly ended with an abrupt explosion as the sphere was inflating. The inflatable sphere had been launched from NASA's Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia at 5:40 p.m. that day. For the first few minutes, everything went well. Then, unexpectedly, the inflating metallized balloon burst. The payload engineers had left residual air inside the folds of the balloon by design to help it inflate. The air expanded so rapidly, and because of the zero pressure outside, it ruptured the balloon. The balloon only had a thin metallized plastic skin, and when it ruptured, it ripped that skin to shreds. The Shot-Put-1 booster rocket that was sending the balloon into space was destroyed. The use of residual air to help blow up the Satelloon, which is what they called the balloons at that time, that was a bad idea. As a result, thousands of fragments of aluminum-covered balloon were reflecting the light from the setting sun, and they were floating up in the atmosphere. All that metal, all that sun caused the flashing lights. And it was a stimulating sensation seeing thousands of tiny flashing lights on display up in the air. For NASA to tell the whole truth about what had happened, that an entire collection of little moving lights, they didn't think the public could handle it. They felt that explaining or trying to explain what happened would be much too complicated for the press to understand. Now let me go about explaining how I applied the scientific method to that October 28, 1959 anomalous phenomenon. I'll now show you how an anomalist goes about applying the scientific method to identify, analyze, and explain an exceptional event. I regularly use the scientific method to explain and explore exceptional objects and events. Traditionally, the scientific method incorporates at least the following steps: observing, researching, developing a hypothesis, predicting, experimenting, and drawing a conclusion. Let's take them one step at a time. Observing. Observation is the first step of the scientific method and incorporates noticing as well as reflecting upon the world around you. Observing can be informal or formal. During the incident along the East Coast, reports of extraordinary sightings came pouring in. The observers described a variety of sensations involving spectacular flashing lights, which were unusual. Numerous eyewitnesses made reports to the police and the fire departments, as well as the newspapers, television stations, and radio stations. These observers wanted information about those strange, myriad, mysterious, minute flashing lights up in the sky. They were worried. They thought maybe it was a meteor shower. Was it fireworks, possibly? Or more Sputniks? Something possibly that NASA launched? Or, more importantly, for most people, was it UFOs? Next step involved researching. I read everything available about the topic, and I used as many different sources as possible that might be linked to the anomalous event from 1959. I collected information from primary sources such as autobiographies, diaries, emails, interviews, letters, official records, raw research data, speeches, and declassified reports. During the late 1950s and early 1960s, passive and active communication satellites were often discussed. The United States made attempts at 38 satellite-related launches. Only 46% of the United States attempts were successful. The next step, I had to develop a hypothesis. My hypothesis was a calculated guess, nothing more. During the late 1950s, less than 50% of the United States government's passive and active communication satellite launches were successful. Passive communication satellites incorporated something they called satelloons, which were metal-coated balloons. NASA eventually produced two large spherical passive satellites that were successfully launched, one in 1960, one in 1964. Details about these two ECHO project satellites are as follows. The two satelloons were giant spheres made of aluminized mylar, folded carefully and placed into a two-piece spherical payload container. I hypothesized that the East Coast aerial anomaly of October 28, 1959 was caused by a satelloon prototype exploding in Earth's atmosphere. The resulting event was an unanticipated, irregular, unique occurrence that was perceivable and worthy of investigation. My next step was to make a prediction. The prediction phase of the scientific method allows a researcher to be specific, or at least more specific, about the hypothesis. Therefore, I predicted that the October 28, 1959 exceptional event was genuinely an anomalous phenomenon because it involved an unanticipated, irregularly occurring, unique event that was perceivable and worthy of analysis. This unique occurrence did not involve a UFO controlled by intelligent extraterrestrials. Through research in the process of elimination, the mysterious specks of light flashing up in the sky were not caused by a meteor shower, they were not fireworks, they were not caused by other Sputnik satellites, but they were caused by the sun shining on fragments of a luminized miler from an exploded satelloon. NASA did not claim responsibility for the mysterious specks of light. The next step was to conduct an experiment. So I designed an experiment that used a technique known as backward mapping. Backward mapping is a technique whereby a story is told in reverse to identify the root causes of an issue that needs to be resolved. Following is a backward map that I created. And I'll start with 1959, the date of the event. So in 1959, the initial test launch of a 110-foot diameter inflatable metallized sphere for the Echo 1 passive communications satellite project ended abruptly with the big sphere unexpectedly exploding. Thousands of fragments of the illuminized polyethylene balloon floated back into the atmosphere, reflecting the light of the setting sun. In 1958, a 100-foot Echo satellite underwent inflation tests in a hangar. In 1957, by the middle of the late 1950s, all the techniques and technology necessary for satellite communications had been invented. By May of 1948, polyethylene balloons coated with aluminum were regularly being flown from Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. They were flown by teams from New York University and the Air Material Command's Watson Laboratories. In 1945, the initial concept of a passive communications satellite system was proposed by science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke. In an October 1945 Wireless World magazine article, Clarke wrote about the development of geosynchronous satellites. Clarke's article was entitled Extraterrestrial Relays. The satelloons that he talked about would be launched aboard V-2 rockets. These early passive communications satellites were intended to be inflatable spheres with a thin, metal-coated plastic skin. Now, the last step in the scientific process was drawing a conclusion, and here's what I said. The East Coast incident of October 28, 1959 was a type of anomaly. It was more or less an anomalous phenomenon. It was an anomaly because it was an unanticipated, irregularly occurring, stimulating event that was perceivable and worthy of analysis. The event was an anomalous phenomena, but it did not involve a genuine UFO. The event did involve a test of a 110-foot diameter inflatable sphere for the Echo 1 passive communications satellite project that had surprisingly ended abruptly with the sphere exploding as it inflated. Thank you for visiting my YouTube channel, Explore the Exceptional with Dr. Gross. And I'm Dr. Bob Wenzel Gross. Thank you.